Good evening, everyone. Before I call the meeting to order, I wanted to first take a moment to remember the life of one of our Liberty High School students, Jackson Jack Schneckloff, who passed away peacefully on March 23rd. Although I didn't personally know Jack, his family shared that he found enjoyment in athletics and played baseball, basketball, and football while growing up. He especially had a passion for football and played for Liberty's football team. Jack was described as a well-loved classmate who was funny, caring, and kind to those around him. His sweet and selfless personality will be deeply missed by all that loved him. Excuse me. The ICCSD Board of Education, as well as our entire community, send our condolences to Jack's parents, Nick and Allison, and his brother Will, as well as his entire family and friends who will greatly miss him. At this time, I would ask that we take a moment of silence to celebrate and reflect upon the life of Jackson Jack Schneckloff. Thank you. I will now call tonight's meeting to order. Thank you to those attending in person tonight and those staying engaged by watching our recording. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the lobby on a table and turn it in to our board secretary, Kim Coven, seated at the end on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. And before we dive into tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me tonight. To my right is Superintendent Matt Degner, Directors Pilcher Hyatt, Eastham, and Vice President Williams is at a state competition for mock trial tonight. So go mock trial. To my left, we have Directors Abraham, Clausen, and Finch, along with Board Secretary Kim Coven. And with that, we will dive into our first agenda item, which is our education showcase, the City High IJAG students and Bailey Carroll.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Good evening, members of the school board, ICCSD staff and teachers. Thank you so much for your incredible service to our young people and to our community. My name is Sarah Richardson, and I'm a proud graduate of the Iowa City Community School District, along with 11 other members of my family. I was also privileged to be the first IJAG specialist in Iowa City 10 years ago, thanks to the work of former city councilor and Iowa City community member Dee Vanderhoff, who brought IJAG to Iowa City. Now, I'm the vice chair of the IJAG State Board and a once-a-week volunteer in the City High classroom for IJAG, which is the favorite part of my week. Tonight, you have a treat in store from you as you will hear from the amazing specialists and staff of IJAG from City High and from our headquarters in Des Moines. With that in mind, they have more interesting things to say perhaps than I, so I won't take long, but I want to share some quick history about IJAG and give you some context for IJAG, which stands for Iowa Jobs for America's Graduates. IJAG was born nearly 25 years ago in Iowa under Democratic Governor Tom Vilsack and has grown and prospered since then under both Democratic and Republican governors. Our current Republican governor, Governor Reynolds, was an early member of the IJAG board, and she is now the chair of the National JAG board because this is a national program. Her vice chair is a Democrat, Albert Bryan, from the U.S. Virgin Islands. I pause and commend IJAG and JAG for their bipartisan work over the last really 40 years since JAG was formed, and I think we could all take a page from that book. In Iowa, we have very strong bipartisan support, which has continued to this day to support the 7,200 young people that graduate from the IJAG, that have graduated from the IJAG program and have pursued positive post-secondary paths in college, the trades, or the military, among other opportunities. Our job in IJAG is to get those students over the graduation line and help them pursue financially stable, sustainable, and prosperous futures. And we do that in a variety of ways, and you'll hear that from our specialists. Iowa City alums have graduated from all 3 state universities and small colleges and selective universities around the country, as well as local community colleges. They're currently working in the trades, they serve in our National Guard, they work at the University of Iowa, and in local and national companies and nonprofits. I still stay in touch with the students that I taught 10 years ago, and it's a joy in my life to be part of this program. Most of you may not know IJAG, but if you've ever had more than a 2-minute conversation with me, I proselytize about it, okay? The key to this program's success are the combination of community and corporate support from companies in Iowa such as John Deere, Principal Financial, AT&T, Wellmark, and Hy-Vee, among others, as well as the support we have from the governor's office over time and the legislature, in addition to the school districts that support our 155 programs across the state. There's your context, there's your history. I could go on all night, but these folks have more to tell you, and it'll be exciting all the way through. Thank you for your support of our programs in this district.
Thank you, Sarah. And do we just move this into slideshow? Okay. I'm Wendy Mim Harold, and thank you to Matt and to the board for allowing us to be here to speak a little bit about Iowa Jobs for American Graduates. I want to talk very briefly so you can hear from our specialists, but the IJAG program has 3 pillars. It's about trauma-informed care, really working on the brain health of the students that we work with to assure that they feel connectiveness, belonging, self-development, that critical thinking and communication skills. The next pillar that we focus on is project-based learning, hands-on learning in the classroom with curriculum that allows them to understand the careers that are available in the Iowa City region as well as in the state of Iowa, which really then goes into our 3rd pillar, which is that employment engagement. Really making sure that every student has a good understanding of the careers that are available, but also that connectivity. With that, we assure that with our project-based learning, we're working with them in 7 essential constructs. So career readiness, career development, self-development, which I think is very important, communication technology, critical thinking, life skills, self-advocacy, conflict resolution, and the work-based learning is when we're really looking at the 3 different pillars where they have relationships with businesses, engaged in understanding, mock interviewing, speaking engagements, to relevance, where they're having a classroom business mentor, they're networking with businesses, they're working on work site tours, or really doing some job shadows one-on-one with a business, to the last area, which is really that rigor, making sure that before they graduate or as soon as they graduate, they have an opportunity to be in apprenticeship, in internship, in industrial credential, on-the-job training, or continuing on in post-secondary education. And the thing that I think is so important, when our students go through our program, they are and have accomplished their leadership skills, and they set themselves apart from their classmates in that arena. and that's because of the impact of our IJAG specialist. We have over 7,200 students that we serve across the state in 140 programs, and we're proud to say that we have 98% graduation rate. 76% of the students are in employment full-time, and 80% of our students after graduation, we stay with them a year after graduation, and we know that they're connected either to employment or in a post-secondary education opportunity. And one last thing that we talked about with that leadership, we have a career development conference, and we just held it last week. We had over 1,200 students competed to get to 600 students coming to Des Moines last week on Thursday. And I'm gonna do a drum roll. I'm gonna let Leela tell you what happened with some of your students.
So as you guys may or may not know, we are in all three high schools. We are in City High, we are in West, and we are also at Liberty. And two of those high schools placed #1 in one of those 8 categories at CDC. And one of them was at Iowa City Liberty High School. Brooklyn is a specialist, and she is a first-year specialist, so to have her students place first place at this CDC with over 600 students is phenomenal. And it speaks to the work that she is doing and that connectedness that she is providing to her students. And they placed #1 in the business plan. So she had 4 students compete in that business plan, and they won first place. And then we also had Josh at West. His student placed #1 in prepared speaking. And so we are super excited for our Iowa City folks. And Josh he's been with us 5 years, going on 5 years. And so that also speaks to the longevity of our specialists staying in their positions and, again, focusing on that connectedness.
And Leela, can you let them know, they actually now, those individuals get to compete at the national level. So they're going with us and to Florida, to Orlando for 4 days in April, and we compete for the national awards.
And we won some national awards last year, so we're hoping to bring some home this year as well. Up on the screen is some of the data points. Of course, we can't come up here without speaking some data. We are serving right now in Iowa City across those 5 programs. We have 9, 10, 11, 12 in both City High and West, and then we have the 11, 12 in Liberty. And we are serving 177 young leaders in all 3 of those buildings. 61.58% of those are on free and reduced lunch. 43% male, 55% female and other. And then, of course, 55% African American, Latinx, or Hispanic, 28%, white, 12%, multiracial, 3%, and Asian, 2%. And that is current state right now. We're on trimesters, and so those numbers fluctuate based on those trimesters, and so it can go up and it can go lower, but we always are pushing to serve the max amount of students that we can. And then on the right-hand side is our follow-up. As Wendy said, we follow up with students after they graduate. Every month, we are following up with our students. Lauren will talk more about that when she gets up here. But right now, in our follow-up program, there are 60 students that we are serving. 100% of those students graduated last year who were seniors. 28% are in further education right now, and full-time employment is at 68%, and we're not done yet. Follow-up final numbers are continuously going and changing as students progress throughout the follow-up period. And our specialists continually work with them to provide them resources and opportunities to get them to that self-sufficiency, that employment, or that education, whichever one they prefer. And then any employment rate, so whether they're working full-time, part-time, is 48%, and then that positive outcome rate is 53%, and that's if they're going to military, if they're in the military, if they are in an apprenticeship, if they're in a CTE program, or if they're working part-time and going to school part-time. And so with that, I will turn it over to our specialists so they can really get to the nuts and bolts of what we want you guys to hear about IJAG.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bailey Carroll, and I teach 9-10 at Iowa City High. One thing that we've been helping with this year is Emma's Pantry. So for those of you that are familiar with Iowa City High, you've probably heard of Emma's Pantry. Emma was a student who passed away in July of 2020, and her friend Maggie created this pantry in honor of her because she felt that Emma had skills of servitude and wanted to keep her name and legacy going. IJAG adopted this pantry within the past couple of years, and so we've been running this over this past school year. We held a food drive in December, which had a great outcome. And we've been providing food every single week into the pantry. Our students spend some of their free time stocking and taking inventory of the pantry, which is a great skill for them to learn. So that's all about what we're doing with Emma's Pantry right now. You want to talk about it for now? Sure.
Hi, everybody. I'm really short. I'm sorry. I'm Lauren Whitehead. I teach the 11th and 12th grade students. One of the things we're really excited about this year is we were reviving the City High Talent Show. So this will be our big fundraiser in May. We haven't had a talent show in a few years at the high school. We're really excited to tap into City High's talent, our students, as well as staff. Mr. Bacon has made promises. And we're really thrilled to spearhead this. We think IJAG has really stepped up in its representation in City High School and is doing really important things for that community. So this is our big thing. Please, you're all invited. Please come. We really want the audience full to support our students and their incredible talents. It will be an amazing show. And our students, our IJAG students, are organizing, marketing the event, and they will be the hands on stage, making sure that this showcase goes really well. What's next? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so this is some of the stuff that we're doing in the classroom to kind of give you an idea of the things that we do in IJEG. So one of our main PBLs, which is project-based learning, right? That's one of our 3 main things. So we've been including mock interviews, resume building, and transferable skills into the classroom. All of my freshmen and sophomores that have been a part of my class this year have already done a mock interview in the fall. So this will be their second mock interview where they will be able to really hone in on those skills. And the goal is that they use those skills to get those part-time jobs to gain more skills that help them get into that lifelong sustainable wealth career for them. Another thing that we're working on is organization skills. So a lot of my freshmen and sophomores right now were in junior high during COVID. So that means they were doing school online, and as we all know, that was a huge struggle for a lot of students. And with that being said, the organizational skills kind of went down the drain with that, which is totally understandable. That's a lot for everyone. And so we're really focusing on how to keep track of assignments when they're due. That's what we're working on right now in class. Yeah, and then Lauren will talk about what they're doing.
So the 11th and 12th graders, most of my kiddos are already employed. They've done interviews, but we continue to work on thinking about interview skills for that next level job, that step up from your part-time job at Walmart to your full-time job in a trade at P&G or in this school district or something like that. I have lots of students who've moved on to become paras in this district. We, this spring, have been working a lot on self-development and social skills, preparing them for entering the workforce. Conflict resolution has been a big part of our spring curriculum, really working to understand underlying needs, the things that go underneath conflict, to work together to build solutions. This is such an important part of life and work, right? And then we are working on strengthening our sense of identity and community. A lot of my kiddos are, I just did a survey about their feelings for the future, and the number 1 word that came up was scared. So I'm really trying to build their strength in themselves and help them feel grounded in their identities and who they are, so that when they make this transition to life after high school, that they can make that really strongly and successfully. And I do follow them for a full year after graduation, so I'm still in touch with my graduates from last year. I get to hear about their strengths, their triumphs, their struggles, and help them and be part of their lives until they move forward into adulthood.
Yeah, so we talked about bringing in employer engagement. So some employers that we've had this year so far, the University of Iowa, the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, Kirkwood, just in general, talking to our students about a 2-year degree versus a 4-year degree. Kirkwood Nursing came in and talked about healthcare degrees in general, but specifically what qualifications go into that and into nursing, because I think Lauren would agree, we have a lot of students interested in nursing, which is awesome. We love that. But making sure that they have all of the information to succeed is so important. We brought in law enforcement, Jam Restaurant Group, which is a part of Popeyes. Van Meter Incorporated from Cedar Rapids, and they also have a base in Iowa City. We brought in the Army so far and the National Guard, so all areas that we've noticed student interest that we try to bring into the classroom to make sure that they make that connection and they have an adult that they can connect with within their interests. Speakers that we brought in so far this year, outside of kind of employers, would be, we brought in Mayor Bruce Teague. Our students loved that so much, talking to him. Sheriff Brad Kunkel kind of talked about jobs in law enforcement, but also just kind of how Johnson County functions as a whole. Tab Wiggins, who is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at the University of Iowa, came in and spoke to my classes about careers within diversity and inclusion and just maybe something that you haven't thought of before when it comes to a job. Different field trips that we've gone on this year. I took my students to the Career Inspire event, which is put on by Junior Achievement in the fall, which was really cool because there were probably, I would say, 40+ employers at that event, and everything was hands-on, so students really got to be a part of that. Their favorite part of that, I think, was there was a competition for people carrying merchandise off of a truck and stacking it and then taking it down and putting it back on the truck, and that was timed, so that was pretty intense and very fun for them. And then we also we take students to the Capitol to talk about IJAG, which I think is very impactful, being able to see the state capitol for the first time. Both students I took this year, first time ever. They spoke about Career Development Conference, which is a conference where students hone in on those employability skills and really represent themselves and what they've learned. I'm taking students to the University of Iowa coming up just to see what a big college looks like, what a big university looks like. Build My Future in Des Moines is also another big career fair. And then we're also hoping to take students to a cosmetology school for students that are really interested in things like that. And then Van Meter, we're hoping to have a visit here soon. Yeah.
I'll speak briefly about our successes, which are so many, it's hard to condense them into one slide. But we can say that about 20% of our current roster made honor roll during one trimester this year, and 45% of our roster earned 3.0 or above during a trimester this year. We had an amazing success. One of Bailey's 9th graders won 3rd place in a national level essay contest on Black History Month through an IJAG provided opportunity. And we have had every student complete at least 5 hours of community service so far this year. And one thing I do want to say that isn't on a slide or in a data point and that I hear from my students all the time is that IJAG is really a family to these kids. Some of them start in 9th grade and stay with us till graduation. Some of them join us in the middle because their friends pull them in, because their family members were members. And we really do become a family for these kids, a sort of family within the school, and those bonds don't go away. So that is a success to me of our program. And I'll speak to this briefly. In the fall, we go to a conference called Leadership Development Conference, and there's a Shark Tank business competition, if you're familiar with the show. And my kiddos placed 3rd place.
And my children placed 2nd place in the Shark Tank competition, which was really cool because they were very nervous. However, they were able to get over that barrier, and there are not a lot of times where you're competing and speaking, and so IJAG is able to give those kids that opportunity that I think that a lot of students don't get necessarily in high school unless they're seeking that out. And it's more so we're seeking them out and giving them this opportunity, and I know that all of our students were so proud of themselves for doing so well at that competition. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, and we did have some students that were going to come, but they're working.
Yes.
Or their
They're
transportation.
either working their part-time jobs or didn't have a ride, so.
And one last thing, speaking of family, speaking return on investment, speaking full circle, Rebecca Vasquez, if you could stand up. She is a IJAG alumni, and she's now our program manager for the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area.
Great.
Thank you.
I don't know if directors had any questions, but if not, thank you so much for the presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you for investing so much time and energy into our students. Next on our agenda is our community comment. As a reminder, those wishing to speak should turn in their speaker form to Board Secretary Kim Colvin, seated on the end to my left. Thank you for your interest in Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you would like to speak. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the districts. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subjected to legal action for those which are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. And with that, our first community comment is Ashley Clark, who will be followed by Chastity Dillard.
Can you guys hear me okay? No? Better? Okay. Good evening, everybody. As she said, my name is Ashley Clark, and I am the Assistant Director of Learning and Care Programming at Neighborhood Centers of Johnson County. I supervise and oversee 4 after-school programs within the Iowa City School District. We serve about 200 children a day in those programs. As you may know, the federal grant we know of as 21st Century has been cut, and we will no longer be getting access to that source of funding for our children in our programs. Right now, we have 2 schools that receive this funding, and it allows 30 children at each site to access our programming both during the school year and in the summer free of charge. The families are ones that cannot access other sources of funding in the community, and they also cannot pay. However, on June 7th of this year, 30 of those scholarships will disappear forever from Mark Twain Elementary School. Another 15 will disappear from Alexander Elementary School this summer. As I'm sure you all know, out-of-school time is really important for a lot of reasons. You're going to hear from some families tonight. You're going to hear some stories about how the presence of our programs and others like us in the district impact their families. It allows them to have and keep jobs so that they can pay their bills and feed their children. As we know, kids cannot learn and grow without these basic necessities. However, programming also provides another really important function. The practicality for families, but also the enriching benefits of development of these children as whole human beings. The chance to run around, get exercise, eat, engage in social learning, social problem solving, critical thinking, STEM activities, the arts, the list goes on and on for us. We know that summer break also can be of detriment to some kids. Especially those who do not have access to enriching experiences. Kids with nowhere to go or anything to do, what will they be doing? Sitting at home, watching TV, being on their phones, playing video games. That's actually the best we can hope for those kids. They also could be out getting in trouble. And as they age, that trouble gets more and more serious. This isn't good for mental health, for physical health, for brain development. Many of these children who access this funding are also getting tutoring services. Without that, they will continue to fall behind. All of our kids in this program fall into this category. Some of them will continue to struggle if their summer is not filled with structure, stimulation, and enrichment and experience. I'll give you an example of one of our kids this year. His name is We'll call him Chris. He's in 3rd grade, and he loves soccer. If we let him do whatever he wants, he would just play soccer the whole day, which is wonderful. But this program also funds 4-H to come in weekly, and they provided him with an opportunity to paint and use paint markers on a canvas. This is not an activity he would have chosen on his own. It's not one he has access to at home. And he loved it. He created an amazing piece of abstract art. and came and showed it to me. He was so proud of himself. Not only did he want to show it to the adults, he wanted to go to the next group of kids, stand up in front of his peers, show them his amazing piece, and describe his inspiration and why he did that. Without that funding, this couldn't have happened. This is just one small example of what happens every day. Chris is losing his scholarship. We don't know what his family will do to keep him safe this summer. We don't know what choices that's going to force them to make. We all deserve a safe place to be, all the kids, and they all deserve to be enriched. But what are we going to do about it, right? NCJC is pledging $25,000 of our own money to help scholarship these children. We are also working with the district in the future to apply for the Community Schools Full Service Grant, which we are so grateful and so excited for. But there is a gap.
Thank you.
We need your help.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Next up is Chastity Dillard, followed by Emily Sinwell.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Chastity Dillard. I live in Coralville, and again, my name is Chastity Dillard. I am the Development and Communications Director for the Neighborhood Centers of Johnson County. And I just want to say, over the last 9 years working at NCJC, I have witnessed the important work our organization has done in this community for our children, youth, and families, while working hand in hand with our neighbors, staff, and local partners. As you may know, NCJC has been a friend and partner of the Iowa City Community School District since the early 2000s, and we currently provide before and after school programs at 4 of the Iowa City schools, which would be Garner, Mark Twain, Alexander, and Grant Wood. The last 3 of which have the highest free and reduced lunch program populations in the district. So I'm here tonight with my coworkers because we're concerned. Again, as you already may know, the Iowa City Community School District after-school programs are losing the 21st century funding as the federal contracts are end and are ineligible for renewal. This school year, as my coworker said, Mark Twain will lose this funding just like Hills BSP did last year. This means that parents of 30 kids currently enrolled at our Mark Twain after-school program will not have access to safe, affordable childcare this summer and moving forward. Further cuts to the 21st century program also means that an additional 15 Alexander before and after school kids will be left out this summer, and 10 of those kids will also lose funding for the entire next school year. We all know how important after-school programs are for our populations most in need, especially the schools that we serve in this community. You'll hear more from my coworkers and other families how this is going to affect the families and the kids. We're here tonight to urge you as a school board to consider further partnering with NCJC and to help us find ways to close this gap in the short term. We're launching a campaign to raise $100,000 to provide all of our kids with a safe place to go this summer and next school year. This is an immediate need. So again, we appreciate the work you and school staff are doing behind the scenes to work with us to find a solution that will alleviate this problem in the long term. NCJC is also committing our own $25,000, which will initially support 16 kids this summer. Will the district further its support in the following ways? The first one is we'd love to come back to a meeting under an agenda item and present on the importance of after-school and summer programs. 2, would you consider finding a way to allocate more funds to after-school programs this summer beyond CDAC and Bridge Care and match our commitment of $25,000? And 3, would you join us in this campaign by helping us spread this word to our entire community? So again, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to our continued work together to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Emily Sinwell, followed by Bella Ariando. And if I mispronounce your name, just correct me when you get up there.
Okay, you said it right. It's Emily. No, I'm kidding. I'm Emily. It's great to be here. Good evening. I'm here really to support the BASS programs and the 21st Century scholarships that are going away. I help run the Iowa City Catholic Worker. We have 2 houses of hospitality. We house migrants and immigrants, and we are full. And as you may know, migrants are coming. The border is open still in some ways, and every day we get new families. One of our houses of hospitality is in the Twain district. And, families come to this country with so many barriers. I'm sure you know all of them. Finding work is so hard, but it is a breath of relief to give them hospitality, but it is a breath of relief to say, hey, your school offers a summer program, your school offers an after-school program. It's okay, you can take that job, you can work till 5 o'clock because they're gonna be in a safe, healthy environment. So those are just two things that I love to tell them when they arrive to the United States with us. I think it's really important to keep these services in our schools because it eliminates access issues. They're already going to school, they're there, they can stay there. Families have a trusting relationship with the staff and the teachers at school. I'm also a psychiatric and family nurse practitioner, and every day in the community we're talking about improving mental health among kids and adolescents. This is how we do it. We keep these programs going because this is where mental health starts, right, with these programs. And then I just want to say, there are so many great programs through the Iowa City School District. I learn every day about new ones because a lot of the kids at our houses are involved with them. But if they're not accessible to everyone, we're not going to be able to move forward. We are in this together. I think we learned during the pandemic that it affected us all, right? And so we have to really take care of everyone in order to improve outcomes. So I would invite all of you to be part of the solution. I know it sounds like that you guys are looking at long-term solutions, but what can we do for these 30 families and more this summer so that they can be at school where they should be, where parents can be working and feel safe that their kids are in a safe and supportive environment? So I'm happy to be part of that solution too. That's why I came here today, and I hope that we can do something to bridge that gap until we can find longer-term solutions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next up, we have Bella Ariando, followed by Tucci Torres.
Hello. I am Bella Arredondo, and my name is Bella Arredondo, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of our after-school program, but specifically our Spanish-speaking families that would be significantly impacted if, unfortunately, we didn't have this scholarship. I forgot to mention, so my position at Neighborhood Centers of Johnson County, I am the language liaison for Before and After School program, as well as the lead for Mark Twain Before and After School program. So most of these families, they don't have family or friends that could watch their children. So these after-school programs are, of course, helping them financially, but also helping them have care for their children so that they can pay their bills, pay their necessities, pay their everything that they need for their children. If these parents don't have this scholarship or don't have this way to be able to come to this after-school program or this summer camp, a lot of them, I actually have a paper full of surveys that we've done of these families that have told us a lot of them are pretty the same, and a lot of them either would not be able to work, they're gonna have to, because they don't have any other source of childcare, they will have to quit their jobs, and therefore, financially, they were going to struggle very, very much. And some of them even said that they might have to leave their kids home alone because it is not an option to be financially unstable like that. It's not an option to not have a job and not be able to make ends meet. These children will not only lose the after-school program, but it also comes with many opportunities. A lot of these children, like I said, I work with mainly the Hispanics and the Hispanic families, and it's just crazy how much English they have learned over just the last couple months. It's substantial how much they have learned. It is like they came here not knowing a lick of English, and now we can have full conversations. Other teachers notice it. The kids notice it. It's been amazing. They've learned a lot of different social skills that they wouldn't have been able to learn anywhere else. They get opportunities. We do things like we go to museums, we go to pools, we go to nature parks, amusement parks, we go to different splash pads and stuff, different things that they wouldn't have the opportunity to go to or they wouldn't even know about if it wasn't for these summer camps or summer or after school programs. And actually coming from somebody that grew up very, very low income and not having these different opportunities, I feel like it's another reason why I'm so passionate about these kids being able to do something like that. Honestly, it's almost bringing tears to my eyes because it's just speaking to these families and just seeing how much they genuinely need this. I just want to be able to do whatever I can in my power to help them do that. So I would really appreciate any help, and with us working together, I know we can definitely do something for these families. Thank you guys so much for listening to me, and have a great day.
Thank you. Next up, we have, I believe, Tucci Torres. Please correct me when you get to the microphone, followed by Heidi.
Buenas tardes,
Good afternoon, evening.
mi nombre es Jackie Torres.
My name is Jackie Torres.
Yo vengo porque quería que los ayuden con el programa de la escuela,
I'm here today, so I'd ask you for help for the school program.
porque es muy importante para nuestros hijos
It's very important for our children,
y nosotros no podemos pagar para que ellos puedan tenerlo y hay poco espacio en la escuela para ellos para poder tener el programa.
we're not able to pay for this program so they can be there, and there's limited spots for them to be in this program.
Porque yo he intentado tener a los niños míos en el programa y nunca hay espacio y yo tampoco tengo dinero para poder pagar.
I've tried to get my kids in these programs, and it's really hard, and I don't have the money to pay for these programs.
Entonces por eso vengo para pedirles que nos apoyen y nos ayuden con el programa siempre.
So that's why I'm here today, to ask you for your support and your help for this program always.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my apologies, Ms. Torres, for mispronouncing your first name. And for the record, it's Jackie. My apologies.
Okay.
I probably wrote it slowly.
Next up, it's Heidi, followed by Dina Bashara.
Hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Heidi Osorio.
Hi, good evening to everyone. My name is Heidi Osorio.
Soy madre de una de las estudiantes de TUEI
I'm a mother of one of the students at Twain.
y quiero hablarles sobre la importancia que tiene el programa y las becas para nosotros.
I want to talk about the importance of this program and the scholarships to us.
La situación es que a la mayoría trabajamos y la mayoría somos madres solteras y necesitamos de esa ayuda para nuestros hijos.
Most of us work, a lot of us are single parents, and we need this help for our children.
Y quisiera pedirles que nos siguieran apoyando con el programa porque la mayoría pues no tenemos la capacidad de poder pagar esos programas.
And I would like to ask you for your support to continue the help with this program, because a lot of us don't have the capacity to do this.
Y es muy importante para también la educación de nuestros hijos.
It's very important too for the education of our kids.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dina, followed by Roberto.
Hello, I want to thank all the previous speakers for bringing this to my attention because I wasn't aware of this issue, so thank you all. Dina Bashara, Iowa City. I'm grateful for the work that is being put in by members of the mental health work group, and especially that of our local nonprofits such as Community and UAY, who are such powerful advocates for the mental health needs of all of our students. And at the same time, as you know, I am deeply disappointed and honestly disturbed by the fact that both parents and special education representation were excluded from this work group. You know this is an urgent issue, and I would say it's an emergency for many families. I hear from folks sometimes monthly, weekly, sometimes daily about students and families in crisis due to mental health challenges and illness. What do these students have in common? They are or have been in special education. What else do they have in common? They have never been offered any mental health supports or services of any kind, ever. And this is historically absolutely par for the course. I've looked at IEPs and BIPs of students with diagnosed mental health disorders, and with a couple notable and outstanding exceptions, they are treated to nothing more than behavior modification, which is, in reality, all too often, nothing more than glorified obedience training. Why? Why do we neglect the mental health needs of children with disabilities? Quoting a 2021 paper in Psychiatric Services, quote, historically, psychiatric illnesses were conceptualized as resulting from intrapsychic conflict and persons with intellectual and development disabilities were thought to lack the intellectual capacity to have an interpsychic conflict, and thus were thought unable to have psychiatric illness. And I believe this is, in large part, why we are where we are. So in spite of the fact that we now know that students with disabilities are at much higher risk of co-occurring mental health diagnoses, that autistic people are at much higher risk of contemplating and attempting suicide, at much higher risk of ACEs, in spite of the fact that special education students are at significantly higher risk of being suspended, historically and radically disproportionately secluded, in spite of the fact that we know that special education students have exceedingly rarely benefited from any mental health supports whatsoever and have instead been treated to sticker charts, token economies, and other behavior modification regimens when their mental health disorders manifest as externalizing behaviors, in spite of the fact that we know that special education students are some of our most marginalized and at-risk children, in spite of all of that, still there is no one representing special education on this mental health work group. Frankly, I do not see a legitimate excuse or plausible explanation for this omission. I don't see how the work group can continue to conduct its work with no special education or official parent representation. The suggestion that the work group is going to wait to see what the survey suggests in terms of the intersection of mental health and special education is, with all due respect, a little insulting to those of us whose feet are firmly planted at that intersection already. The administrators responsible for overseeing this work group should act to rectify the serious lapse immediately. We need urgent action yesterday. We need an MTSS for mental health. To be clear, we do not have an MTSS for mental health. PBIS is not an MTSS for mental health. The equitable distribution of mental health resources is not possible without it. We currently have a system where some kids get access to some resources some of the time, depending on the school, the teacher, the principal, whether or not they're in special education, how hard and effectively their parents are able to advocate, often to no avail, and a lot of times it just seems to be the luck of the draw. We can do better now. We don't need to wait for Kim Reynolds to be abducted by aliens. We don't need to wait until we turn Iowa blue again. We can do better now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Roberto, followed by Genevieve Trainer.
Hola, buenas. Soy Jaime.
Pero Roberto. Good afternoon. I'm also Jaime. He goes by Jaime.
Soy un padre soltero. Tengo un hijo en Mark Twain.
I'm a single dad. I have a son at Mark Twain.
Mi hijo ha sido beneficiado con el programa.
My son has been benefited from this program.
Y en lo cual ha ayudado mucho a que él pueda aprender inglés y poder desarrollar, compartir con sus compañeros.
What's helped him a lot is that he's been able to learn more English and also development so that he can interact socially with other kids.
Le ha ayudado a que él pueda en las materias en matemática y sobre todo el inglés.
It's also helped him in other materials like math, but more so the English.
Y hoy pues se nos ha dicho que no vamos a tener una beca más.
And, we were informed that we're not going to have this scholarship anymore.
Y nos preocupa porque el costo es alto, no lo podemos pagar.
We worry about this because the cost is really high and we're not going to be able to pay this.
Ya que no podríamos tenerlos en el programa por no tener una beca.
We're unfortunately not going to be able to have them in the program without the scholarship.
Nos sería muy difícil porque hay que pagar renta y pagar los biles, entonces si no tenemos una beca ya no tendremos y hoy no sabremos qué hacer.
It's really difficult because we have to pay for rent and bills, and so we wouldn't be able to afford the program and really don't know what to do.
Así que pedimos hoy que nos escuchen, porque no es fácil ser un padre soltero o ser una madre soltera, como escuché una compañera que pasó.
So today, just asking you to listen to us. It's not easy to be a single dad or a single mom like the woman who spoke.
Para nosotros nos es confiable que ellos estén en la escuela porque están seguros y ellos pueden aprender más.
For us, we feel better, a lot more confident when they're in school, and they can learn a lot more knowing that they're in school.
Hoy no tenemos, si no están en el programa, si no tienen una beca, no tenemos con quién dejarlos.
If they don't have a scholarship to be in this program, we don't have anyone to leave them with.
Así que igual que mi preocupación, hay muchos ahí y otros que no vinieron.
So just like I'm worried, everyone else here is worried, and a lot of people are worried that couldn't be here today.
Así que gracias y por favor pedimos que si nos apoyen para que nuestros hijos estén en el programa y poder tener una beca.
So thank you, and we hope for your support that we can find scholarships so our kids can be in these programs.
Gracias.
Thank you. Next up, we have Genevieve, followed by Ann Houlihan.
Hi, thank you. My name is Genevieve Trainer. I appreciate having a moment to speak tonight. I'm the parent of a kindergartner at Lucas Elementary, and I wanted to address the board on the topic of SF 482, the anti-trans legislation that was passed. And I know that everyone is working diligently to find next steps forward, and I just want to plead with the board to make clear in as concrete a fashion as possible how the district is planning to protect families from the fallout of this legislation in terms of actionable steps rather than a wait-and-see approach. There's so many areas that are blurry and unclear. The bill has explicit provisions for disaster scenarios, but not for disaster drills. It says, you know, like they're lifted in case of a tornado, but what are the kids going to do for tornado drills? The bill allows students to request accommodations, but it doesn't have any provisions for parents or visitors to request accommodations for using the restroom. And obviously there are trans parents in the district who need to be in the schools to support their children, who need to be there for parent-teacher conferences, who need to be there for sporting events, and there needs to be clarity as soon as possible on what those parents are expected to do. And there needs to be clarity on how the district intends to challenge or verify a visitor's gender. if there is a plan in place for what steps would be taken to reach out to someone and prevent these situations that the state has decreed illegal. And we need to know which school official in each building will be authorized to approve requests for accommodation, what's required for schools to cure a violation, who on staff will have access to a student's records in order to challenge or verify their assigned gender. And most importantly, all of us in the community need to know what we can do. We need guidance from all of you on how we can take next steps to help you protect our families, because it's crucial that we know that we're all on the same page, and we know and have seen evidence from the district that you will support trans families and trans children, but we need action steps. We need details as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ann.
My name is Ann Houlihan. I'm from Coralville. And following on the heels of COVID, with students falling behind due to lack of face-to-face time the last few years, cuts are going to be very impactful. Granted, it has been face-to-face for the last year, but making up for lost time, this is not a time to reduce summer school teaching for the at-risk students. I was a single parent of an Iowa City Community School District child. I had a profession so I could afford childcare, but I had friends who could not. It's tough enough parenting and providing care when we have the resources. Those who can't afford them should not be left out. I had to have my summer for my son scheduled by April 15th. he had to have a program down, and the summer had to be mapped out, or he'd be left out, and these people don't have that option. So one other thing, discipline is difficult at the best of times, but increasing classroom sizes is worrisome. It will be difficult for teacher retention if teachers are put in even more pressure. And that's all. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Next up, my apologies, I cannot read the handwriting for the first name listed, but I have an address on Johnson Street, and they're here to talk about before and after school program. I think it could be Francisco.
I apologize for my handwriting. It's Francisco.
Okay, thank you.
Muy buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Estoy aquí porque realmente pues estamos bastante preocupados, nuestros compañeros, mi esposa, mis amigos.
I'm here because we're really worried, all of us, my wife, friends.
Llevo un año aquí en Estados Unidos, de verdad ha sido un proceso bastante difícil para todos nosotros.
I've been in the United States for a year, and the truth is it's been a really difficult process for myself and others.
Pero lo más difícil de todo ha sido sacar a nuestro hijo adelante, que él pueda ir a la escuela, ir a recogerlo, salir del trabajo, venir.
I think one of the hardest part is moving our kids forward, getting them to school, going to work, picking them up, etc.
Hace poco accedimos a la beca, hace más o menos un mes, y eso la verdad nos ha ayudado mucho. Ya no tenemos tanto estrés, vamos, ya sabemos que está. Lo más difícil es saber que lo dejamos en manos seguras, en manos de profesionales, de profesores.
It was a month ago that we were given this scholarship, and it's been a lot easier. We don't have to rush from work to pick them up, and we know that they're in good hands, in professional hands.
No es fácil a veces tener un hijo y dejarlo pues cuidando con cualquier persona mientras uno está trabajando, uno no sabe a lo que se enfrenta en muchas ocasiones.
It's not easy to leave your child with somebody that you don't know, that how they're going to care for them and what things they may face.
Pero cuando estamos trabajando estamos más tranquilos porque sabemos que nuestros hijos se están aprendiendo, se están educando, queremos dejarlos en un mundo mejor, queremos aprender más de ellos, saber que nuestros hijos están aprendiendo una nueva cultura, estamos en un nuevo país, se están adaptando a una nueva sociedad.
But when we're working, we love that they're in school, that they're learning things, that they're learning about a new culture, and we love asking them about what they're learning and try to move forward in this new place.
Para nosotros como hispanos no es fácil migrar a otro país donde muchas veces la discriminación es el fuerte, en muchas partes el idioma, la cultura, todo eso, pero hacemos lo mejor que podemos para que nuestros hijos no pasen por todo lo que estamos pasando nosotros.
As a Hispanic, it's been hard to migrate to a new country. We face a lot of things, discrimination, the language barriers, but we move forward and we want the best for our kids.
Quisiera algún día poder llevar a mi hijo a mi país, saber que hizo un buen trabajo, saber que algún día cuando yo esté viejo, saber que hice el mejor trabajo como padre, saber que él es una gran persona, está aportando algo a la sociedad.
One day I'd love to take my son back to my home country and show everyone that he's a great kid, that I did a good job, and that he's giving back to the community and to society that he grew up in.
Todo eso será más fácil con la ayuda de todos ustedes, saber que nos están apoyando, saber que no estamos solos, saber que llegamos a un país donde se nos está dando la ayuda necesaria y no tener que decir no nos apoyaron, no nos ayudaron.
All of this is a lot easier knowing that you support us, knowing that you're on our side, knowing that we have these scholarships available.
De verdad le damos gracias a todos, espero que de verdad nos apoyen con la beca, quisiéramos seguir llevando a nuestro hijo a la escuela, ir a recogerlo, no tener que estar pensando dónde va a estar nuestro hijo, qué estará haciendo.
I want to give thanks to all of you for all your support, and we hope that you can continue to support us through these scholarships, knowing that we can leave our kids somewhere that's safe and pick them up and drop them off and not just leave them with somebody we don't know.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Bill McCoy.
I'll be quick. As you said, my name is Bill McCoy. I live a half a block from Mark Twain School on Ash Street, and I see the kids going back and forth every morning and afternoon with their parents, without their parents. In the interest of full disclosure, I volunteer with the Catholic Worker House. I'm retired now. I retired as a nurse from Mercy Hospital, and I spend a lot of my time now giving a lot of these kids rides to and from appointments, sometimes to and from school. I won't belabor the need. You know that there's a need. You've heard from everybody how much of a need there is. I'll also be honest, I've never really paid much attention to what the school board does. I know you're good people, you do a good job. I trust you. I don't think I've ever voted in the school board elections, but I do trust that you're good people and you'll do the right thing. I was reading this morning how tight your budget is and how you're going to be having to cut a lot of money over the next few years. I understand that. I have a budget too. I have to pay my bills and meet all my expenses. I managed to do that. We're not poor. We're not rich, but we're not poor. And I think that we can trust that you'll do the right thing and know that you have our support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last community commenter for tonight is Wendy, I believe it's Canstano? Sorry, I just butchered your last name, Wendy.
Hi, my name is Wendy Castañón. Hoy me gustaría darles gracias porque mi hijo ya lleva 1 año y medio de estar en el programa.
Today, I want to give you thanks because my son has been in the program for 1.5 years.
Y he visto un desarrollo muy grande en la forma de convivir con sus amigos, en jugar básquetbol, en tener mucha distracción como armar legos y
I've seen a huge growth development in him in terms of interacting with his friends socially, playing basketball, and putting together Legos.
Y eso es un soporte muy bueno cuando ellos están en la escuela y tienen un soporte aparte de la escuela, porque estando en casa solo pueden estar como viendo tele, el teléfono, o no pueden tener como una relación social con más niños para hacer cosas buenas.
This is a huge support, not only being in school, but being in this after-school program. You know, at home, they have little interaction with other people, often on their phones.
Y por eso me gustaría, si ustedes pudieran dar la oportunidad de poder seguir teniendo programa para que los niños puedan tener más relación social y no solo estar solos en casa o sin estar compartiendo con otras personas.
This is why I'd like to ask for your support to continue these programs so they're not just at home, but they're out in these programs socializing and developing.
Porque al no tener tanta interacción con otros niños, piensan que sus autoestimas de ellos solo se encierra como en los juegos o estar callados y estar todo el tiempo solos. Y el programa ayuda mucho en eso.
Because being alone and not being out socially, I feel like it lessens their self-esteem. You know, they're not interacting, they're not talking, they're on video games. So being in the program really helps this.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our community commenters tonight. We do appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to come and address us. Next up on our agenda is approval for tonight's agenda. I would open the floor to entertain a motion.
I move we accept the agenda.
Second.
Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Passed, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Before we dive into consent agenda, I want to check with other directors to see if anyone had questions regarding the bills that they wanted to have documented on tonight's agenda. I didn't. I reviewed them. Okay. Hearing none.
I would just remind the public that we actually do have an opportunity to ask questions about those bills, so we typically do that prior to the meeting.
Okay, next up, the consent agenda. Are there any items that directors would like to pull from that agenda? If not, I would open the floor to entertain a motion for approval.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, I believe we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next up, we have several public hearings, and Director Clausen will take those over since Vice President Williams is absent tonight.
All right. Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the Tyler Building Parking Project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on February 28, 2023. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on March 1st, 2023. The district will receive bids on this project at 1 p.m. March 30th, 2023 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on March 1st, 2023. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Okay, with that, I will close that public hearing, and the next one is the Lemmy ES HVAC upgrade project.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the Lemmy Elementary School HVAC project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on February 28, 2023. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on March 1st, 2023. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. March 30th, 2023 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on March 1st, 2023. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Okay, hearing none, we will move into our final public hearing. Well, I'll close that public hearing, and we will move into the Wickham Sidewalk Accessibility Project rebid.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the Wickham Elementary School Sidewalk and Accessibility Project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on February 28, 2023. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on March 1st, 2023. The district will receive bids on this project at 10 a.m. March 30th, 2023 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on March 1st, 2023. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
And with that, we will close tonight's public hearings. Thank you, Director Clausen. We will move to policy review and Director Finch for the 600 series and a 700 series. I will let you take it away.
Sure, thank you, President Malone. We did not review the 600 series again today, but we reviewed them at our last P&G meeting and at the last board meeting. Today we did review the 700 series. There were some questions about fundraising for the Student Activities Fund and how that was handled. I think, Director Easton, were all of your questions answered to your satisfaction?
Yes, I think they were. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there were no other additions or deletions to those. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we move right into our discussion items. The first one is just a board retreat summary to sort of bring forward our retreat notes for the public that we held on March 7th from 4:30 to about 8, I think. It was a great retreat. You'll see there that Lou typed up a follow-up letter for us, as well as our norms that's listed there. Before I continue to ramble on, I would open up to see if any directors had any comments that they wanted to share from the board table about that retreat and the work product that we came out with. being our norms?
I thought it was a very productive meeting. I was very thankful for the invitation to the facilitator from the School Board Association. I think she did a wonderful job. It's not often that we get together as a board and in that sort of relaxed atmosphere and to build teamwork, and I really felt like we came away from that meeting feeling more like a team, and it enhanced our communication for sure. So I really like what we did with the norms, and I think that is the purpose of doing norms, is that process, that team building process of developing the norms. And so I'm very happy with the outcome there. I was the one who produced that initial list of kind of like a code of ethics that I modeled after the Des Moines School Board, and this was after this was brought to the retreat in October. And so through that process, what I found is that most of the school districts in the Urban Education Network, and I think most of the school districts in our county have a code of ethics in their policies in the 200 series. And I think the fact that this district doesn't have a code of ethics is kind of a glaring omission. And so what I would propose, I love the norms, but what I do think that we need to go back and do is is to take a look at a code of ethics that we would incorporate into our 200 series. And that's something that we could think about doing yet this spring, or if you would prefer, we could wait until the 200 series come around next year in the fall and do that then. But I think it's a glaring omission. I would strongly urge that we adopt a code of ethics into our board policies.
I would say that I also, in preparation for that meeting, had reviewed the UEN comparable policies. And again, I agree that the norms were good and how they were created was well done. But the reason why I am focused on this is similar to Director Finch, and that is that I want it more formalized in our policies. The norms that we have make sense. That's why they were created as a result of a 3-hour retreat. But I feel like they are a simplified version of what needs to be a more formal policy. And I base that similarly to Director Finch on the fact that these policies do exist pretty much everywhere else in comparable districts except ours. So I would like us to look again at the draft that was created by Director Finch, because if you look at all of the different ones, she incorporated the greatest hits in my observation of them.
Yeah, for me, I'm fine with, since it would be an incorporation into the 200 series, that it's reviewed by P&G, probably not to create more work for that group, but at the next cycle of the review of the 200 series as suggested, unless people have just a burning urge to try and get it done before, because I think P&G doesn't meet during the summer. It's just during the academic year. So fall will be here before you know it.
Very true.
So.
Well, and that 200 series will come up really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thank Director Finch and Director Pilcher-Hayek for voicing, making these part of our board policies. I think that's a good idea. If P&G wants to undertake it over the summertime, that's fine with me. I also think we talked about having the final list made into some kind of something we can project or present to the public during our meetings. And I'm very much in favor of our doing that. I'm not quite sure how to undertake it, but I think that's something that shows the public that these are our values, this is what we're trying to do, and this is how we're trying to do it.
I think the word was signage.
Signage?
Yeah.
Thank you. Signage sounds so tawdry to me, so. But if that's what it takes, I'm for it.
Yeah, just put it up somewhere if we can see it.
Yeah. All right. Were there any other comments? Okay, thank you. All, we move into our next discussion item, which is our equity update. Superintendent Degner.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. We're going to have Director Howard talk to you guys about that this evening. He's going to highlight some of the elements of our Grow Your Own program and provide an update in that area.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to present here today. So just a little bit of a background. We're going to talk about the Grow Your Own Support Staff to Teacher program. The goal of that was to increase teacher diversity, you know, from our own, from focusing on our own staff. Through the foundation, we were grateful to receive a $50,000 grant from Green State Credit Union. As a part of the program, it's cost sharing for tuition, and it guarantees employment for those selected in the cohort. Initially, we selected 10, but after reviewing the commitment of continuing to work full time, 7 agreed to move forward. In return, once they complete the program, they also have to give a 2-year commitment in terms of working for the district. So far, the cohort is doing well. They're currently in classes right now, so they're not able to be here at this moment. 3 of the 7 are actually going to be teaching for us next school year. So one is doing student teaching right now, and then the other 2 will be teaching on a interim basis, on a teacher intern license, and finishing up their schoolwork as that goes on. The rest are doing well and are in good standing, and we're looking forward to seeing them become members of our teaching staff. In addition, we pulled them 3 times this school year for professional development. We focused on the Iowa teaching standards, the Iowa Code of Ethics, and then also just equity in general. And looking over the program, the biggest challenge outside of financial is just the time commitment. For all 7 of them, it's a huge undertaking. They're sacrificing their personal lives, their time with their families to do this. But they're doing well. They're hanging in there. But it is a huge time commitment for them. Looking over this year, if there was something that I could do over, it would be narrowing the scope of the program. Initially, we allowed those selected to go to any university that they chose, any degree program that they wanted to pursue. I think moving forward with another cohort, I would want it to be a little bit more narrower to a specific university, a specific program, so that they could have more intentional programming as a cohort. We're looking into starting a second cohort for August of 2024. So that's a brief update. Are there any questions?
Directors?
Yeah, when you say narrow the program, I mean, is that an opportunity maybe to work with like a specific college or university who would kind of come in on that and support it that way to create a cohort?
Yeah, absolutely. So, ideally being in Iowa City, we'd want to have a, more intentional partnership with the University of Iowa. But really just making sure that there is, it's simpler so that their experiences are the same. They're going through the same, same program, the same courses. They can study together, and then even just in terms of being more intentional with staffing, so that if we really need, ELL teachers we can focus on that, or special ed, or whatever it may be. It was a great pilot program, but it's one of those things you just kind of learn as you go through it. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity to do that.
Great, thanks.
And for next year, how many spots do you think we'll be able to offer?
For next school year, it will be continuing with the group that we have. The main focus is making sure that they get through successfully, and I think we're on track to doing that. But in terms of the financial commitment, I don't think it'll be feasible to add another cohort for 23-24, but for fiscal year 24-25, we can add a new cohort to that.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand it. So we had, this past cohort was for 10 slots, you said, and then we're not sure about next year's?
We have selected 10 for the cohort. 7 decided to move forward with that. One of them will be completed at the end of this school year. The other 2 of the 6 remaining will be teaching on an intern license, so that they can start full-time teaching, but they will still have to finish up coursework, and then the remaining 4 will be still in full-time classes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Director Howard.
Just to add on one thing, President Malone, to the funding piece and to Director Pilcher's kind of question too about the cohorts. Can't thank the foundation and Green State enough for their support of this program over the last 2 years, and we continue to work with the foundation, and that was kind of how we started this, as this pilot and the foundation and Green State helping us get off the ground. And so as we go through these first 2 years, it's really be able to show that benefit on the investment. And so we're hopeful, because of the already generous donation from the foundation and Green State, that they want to continue with us on this journey. But that's really how we're looking at it for this first 2 years, to see where this goes, so that we can go back and show this as money well spent, not only for today, but for the future. So.
Thank you, Deputy Ramey. Were there any additional questions? Okay, next up, we have our preschool update, and I believe that will be Superintendent Degner.
Yes, good evening again. As far as preschool update, I wanted just to provide you some information on conversations that are ongoing with the municipalities. I did update this information in your board update as well, so if you've been in there today or this evening, you'll be able to see some text in there. Maybe starting with some of our smaller municipalities first. Hills did vote last night to continue discussions with the Iowa City Community School District around expanded preschool, and so they are committed to continuing that conversation with us. University Heights says that they're in discussion with other municipalities, but they may not have a firm answer by April 1. I'll follow up with them to get to know if that's not a firm answer on continuing the conversation, or if it's not a firm answer on a funding source, or what details I have there. But Mike Haverkamp just had contacted me here before the meeting. Johnson County Supervisors, they approved a resolution on March 16th that did talk about supporting the ICCSD's expanded preschool effort and continuing to work with us as the project moves forward. And it says the board will consider how best to provide and or structure the financial support requested. So that was some of the text from their resolution. And then when we get to our kind of maybe the big 3 here, Iowa City reported back, and these last 3 conversations are really through my collaborations with the city managers, that Iowa City remains interested in exploring this effort. They'd like to better understand how the proposal impacts some of the community wage enhancement that they've been providing to our child care providers. So we're now engaged in an ongoing every other week meeting with that child care coalition and community to try to problem solve some of those efforts, that if 4-year-olds kind of come onto the public district for preschool, then what happens to those early care providers in the community, and how can they maintain what they're doing? And then also, how do we talk about the summer? The summer kind of seemed to be another one that they had questions about, that if they shift their model during 9 months of the school year, then they can't just shift back and now take all these 4-year-olds in the summer. And so we'll have some good ongoing collaboration with them on that, and I think we'll get to some good solutions. And then probably an outside factor that I know they're concerned about is what the legislature does with property tax reform and how that continues to go. And so I think they're wanting to see how that plays out or how that legislative session closes before they make some firm commitments. But in short, really, and this was echoed by all three, they want to continue the conversation, the collaboration, but they want to understand, some of those impacts to the child care community, impacts to them on the legislative session that we're all underway with. So I know North Liberty has it scheduled again for April 11th is their next follow-up, so here in a couple weeks. Coralville did not have a date for me about when they were going to revisit that, but again, a lot of positivity around wanting to continue the conversation, just some of those pieces that we're all going to have to problem solve together. So all in all, I think we're making good progress, having some good conversation. It's a big, it's a big change, and there's going to be details that need to be worked out and sensitive to those and how it impacts each of the different municipalities. Questions I can answer for you guys about where things stand or information you're hearing that would be helpful?
I just want to understand, Matt, you say there is a group of child care providers and others interested in this general approach that the district is meeting with on a regular basis now?
Yeah, and the first opportunity, we did one meeting here a couple weeks ago. That's the meeting you were at, Charlie. It's a follow-up to that. And so remember, they were referencing that Thursday 9 a.m. meeting. So that'll happen every other Thursday at 9 a.m. And so our team will join with that. I think they call it the Child Care Coalition. And so it really kind of represents some of the private providers in town, some of the public service agencies that also help provide some care to the rest of the community, and we'll be a part of that and talk through those big problems that were identified. One was really the summer, and then what do they do to maintain their financial model during the year, even knowing that they may not have as many 4-year-olds to support that model.
Okay, thank you.
So I provided a memo to the board that tried to summarize the meeting we had, and of course, I didn't include any opinion in it. My opinion or my takeaway from that meeting was that I'm really glad that Superintendent Degner is going to make sure we're represented in that group. I know it's another meeting, but I think it's an important collaboration for us. I know that the district has collaborated here and there and tried to, connect dots, but it's hard to streamline something like that. There's so many stakeholders involved. And I think the important takeaway for me was that all of the stakeholders are equally important, and we need to make sure we're acknowledging the role all of these different stakeholders play. And something that did strike me a bit was, the people that provide childcare, a lot of them are also providing education. And it's, it can rub them the wrong way if we are dismissive of that service they provide. So after listening to so many people today also talk about BASP and summer programming, it's too heavy a lift for a school district to figure all of this out, or at least to fund all of this. So to me, that's another reason why a collaboration could be helpful, and having the municipalities involved in that collaboration, because for heaven's sakes, we're not the ones with extra resources sitting around. I take away from it that I'm very glad that we're going to be collaborating, and that our superintendent's meeting with the municipalities and speaking with them about it. I think that's a very good way forward for this board and for the district.
Thank you, Director Pilcher-Hyatt. Any other additional comments? Okay, thank you both for that. Next up is our budget reduction update. Is it Superintendent Degner again?
You bet. So tonight here late, I uploaded kind of an updated document that's followed the same format from what we've looked at in the Operations Committee meeting. And so you see some things redlined in there and some updated numbers. And so I'm just going to kind of walk you through that briefly and make sure the public's informed of kind of where we're at with the budget reduction conversation. Overall, I do feel good about it. I feel like we're in good shape here for the end of March, and from the process we started back in November, that I think we've taken the necessary strides and done some of the hard work. Tonight we're also going to have Eliza and Nick present to you what the elementary RAM is going to look like for next year, what we're proposing. Our next steps on that would be to communicate that out to the buildings tomorrow. But first, I'll kind of walk you through this document in general, and then we'll get into the specifics of that RAM conversation for elementary class size. So Section 2 provides some updated information around how many staff that we have needing to be added to the general fund. That 57.7 number has been consistent. Projected number of certified staff exiting general fund by category continues to get updated. We have a few more that we're losing through natural attrition at this point. I think that number was a 14 last time, now it's a 21. So we got a little bit more space there, which will help with some of our budget reduction, because you can tell then the text and the narrative under that we looked at several times, those numbers also get updated. And so we're generating a little bit more savings from that gap between the two, but remember, that's really one we haven't counted towards those 8 million, because we really kind of almost double dip in other sections of it as we capture some of those savings back. But you can tell that, again, early retirement strategy was effective from a reduction standpoint, right? We know there's other trade-offs to doing an early retirement package, but as far as a reduction of the number of staff, that strategy worked, and we got where we needed to be. The other budget considerations, there's some consistent things like delayed curriculum purchases at 1.527 million. The Medicaid sped absorbing a portion of the nurses' salaries. You still see that number there. The TLC program modifications, there really should be no new information there after the last time, but we have moved on those things. We've started informing people of how their positions are impacted, or potentially less extra service days that they're going to have, or if there's going to be a different way we do those extra service days, the impact to stipends, the impact to our innovation IDS. All of those things are things internally that we've started to communicate out to our different groups at different times. A significant change you will see is that we've provided a strike through on the attendance support busing, that's no longer a cut we're pursuing. And so we're not targeting any savings there in the attendance support busing. I will say from our team, we think it's probably important for us to bring that conversation back to an operations committee meeting about how we do attendance support busing, what the budget is for it, and are we doing it in the best way possible to serve the kids with the dollars we have. So maybe put a placeholder on that one in your thinking. District administrator reduction. We have achieved our 3 district administrator reduction there. That's updated as of the news late last week, so congrats to Amy again. We'll be sad to see her go, but that'll be one of our FTE that we will not replace. We're not replacing our assistant director of special education position with Deb leaving us, and then also with Adam's move from director of technology to chief financial officer, we won't be backfilling that with an administrator. So there you have your 3 admin cuts at the ESC. Certified staff reduction, this is the part that we're going to come back to and dive into a little bit more, but you saw an initial projection there at the 2.47 million, and now we're targeting that at the 2.295 million. You'll see that in the RAM model, that instead of just going to 2 levels of the RAM, we thought it was better to keep our buildings in 3 different levels to try to create some cushion on how far some buildings would be moving. Moving 2 levels would have been pretty drastic for some of our buildings, and so at max a building moves 1 level, and so that shaved off some of the savings there, closer targeted to 2.295. Online learning program reorganization. This is one we had a lot of feedback and engagement around from our community and our staff. And so here, we had adjusted to providing secondary synchronous instruction, which was an update from our first model. We kind of achieved both goals there about being able to provide the secondary synchronous instruction and still achieving our budget savings for that reduction of $750,000. So I think if we'd have known that sooner, that probably would have eased some of the conversation with staff and with families. But until we had kind of some of those staff assignments come in, and until we could have conversations about how we would potentially deliver that model, it was hard to commit to saying we could do that synchronous instruction. But now we feel good about providing most of those core classes for our secondary kids synchronously. And I think I still had a typo there. I just looked down, it says move secondary program to asynchronous. Something happened on my update there. So I will change that, we'll get that document updated, but it should say move secondary program to a synchronous model for most core class offerings. So I had a bad autocorrect or can't spell one of the two, but we'll get that fixed. I did provide the current program enrollment at 78 students. That's where we sit as of today. Since we've been advertising, you've probably seen a lot of our advertisements on social media. And so we currently have 78 students there, and you can see the targeted budget savings. Next page is the enrollment the enrollment floor for secondary class. And on that one, you see that we're not targeting any savings for next year. That is a long-term strategy that I think is one the district probably is going to need to keep in play or keep considering in the long term. And so I left the potential budget savings after school year 24-25 listed there. But as far as next year, thinking that we're seeing any kind of savings from that is not probably a realized number for us. Central office professional support staff and school-based classified staff reduction. The good news is here we think we're able to keep the building-based support still available around the custodian and also the support staff hours and not needing to do that 4% reduction. So we're just targeting the 3 support positions at ESC for the cut at a number of $230,000. And then this one was a little bit trickier, but additional budget saving opportunities of less than $200,000 because I'm not sure that all of these will actually reach the amount there, but there are some of those that we will still pursue. Like we still want to make sure we reduce obsolete vendor contracts or get out of those. We may not touch every stipend, but there's always a good chance for us to review and revise those extra duty stipends as we work through the process with Brady and negotiations. And then a step placement cap for any new hires, right? When we get to certain specialized positions versus basic, and not to make them seem basic, but some more standard positions is maybe a better way to say it, classroom positions, there may be salary caps that we would want to continue to look at there. Some of the building and department budgets that we had suggested around 5%, I don't think we would need to cut their active budget, but again, if there's savings at the end of the year, that's money that can maybe be recouped by the district and reallocated to some other needs. So there's a few things we kind of crossed off from consideration, but a few that we left in play there for additional budget saving opportunities. And then really the final 3 on the document, as you guys know, are all ones we work through the negotiation process and we'll work with Brady and his team on. Likely, because of some other factors in the district, we won't open until late April, early May as we look at that process. So it'll be a little bit yet before we get to that. But kind of back to where I started, I think we feel good about the progress we made and where the budget stands now. And I'm really annoyed that there was an error on that online one. So I want the online people to hear me. We're not going back to asynchronous on that. We will make that adjustment. It is the commitment we made earlier. So with that, maybe I'll have Eliza and Nick come up at this point and talk to you about the elementary RAM and where we're targeting that currently.
No. What was that? F11, thank you. All right, that's going to be really small. Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
I think it's on our agenda.
The free trial over here on the right-hand side?
Maybe it's the layer up should be there.
Go ahead. One thing I did want to, first, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about this a little bit, but one thing I did want to highlight as Superintendent Degner talked about some of the attrition. That's not just always people leaving the organization, sometimes it's moving roles. So we had some celebrations within that of some of our classroom teachers who had kind of worked in a partnership we had for ELL programming. So they're moving from classroom roles to ELL roles. So that's where sometimes there's some movement within that. It's not just automatically someone's leaving our organization or anything like that. So I wanted to give that little piece of update as we were looking at this, and we'll take a little bit of time. This document, obviously, you're not going to be able to see all the details of it as you look at it today, but a couple things that I'll start with some highlights, and Eliza will talk about a little bit further, is when you first look at this, the items in green that you'll see here, that is actually an indication of the data when this was pulled, and it's saying what our allocation would be according to the enrollment at that time, which it says on this document is 346 teachers. In reality, we have 349 teachers that are currently in our elementary classroom. So just know that as you're looking through this, because it's not, and we can give you another piece of information. You can see the crosswalk if you'd like to. What this then is looking at is the change to 336.5 total teachers, and that's the area in the white. So that would be the plan that going forward, or what we're looking at related to the allocation. And you'll see that as you work through all of our documents there. So I'll turn it over to Eliza to kind of talk a little bit more about the general overview, and then I'll point out a few more specifics for you as you look at this document further later on.
Perfect. All right, good evening. So we realize this is really small, so we will just go ahead and give you an overview, and any questions that you have, please feel free to stop us and we'll answer those at that time. So with this RAM, we are looking at going down to 3 levels. And so we will have level 3, level 4, and level 5. That is looking at the 60%. So our schools that are at 60% FRL or higher are placed in a RAM level 3. And we will have 5 buildings, our top 5 buildings in that. Those class sizes are kindergarten at 24, first and second cap 24, and then the aspirational goal for 3-6 at 28. Then we went to the next level, which is 50 to 59%. So our buildings that were 50 to 59% FRL, they were RAM 4 level, and we have 4 buildings that will be sitting in that area. And that is kindergarten at 24, 1-2 at 26, and 3-6 at 30. And then the rest of the 13 schools are going to be at that RAM level 5. And so that is kindergarten at 24, first, second, 28, 3-6, 32. One thing that to make mention is that we had made that commitment to kindergarten not ever going over RAM 3. And so all those kindergarten numbers will be at 24. So looking at that, we had played with different percentages to think about how we wanted to work the RAM. And one thing that we were super cognizant of was being mindful of those buildings that may have jumped more than 1 level. So if you were a building that was a level 3, we didn't want to move you to a level 5. And so there are half of our buildings are moving from 1 level to another, and the other half are not, but no building is moving more than 1. And so thinking of that, you know, it makes a reduction overall in 12.5 FTE at the elementary level. Again, this chart shows that it's, I think, 8.5 on here, but again, that's just looking as if this were our class sizes on January 31st. So we have those 11 buildings that are moving 1 level, 11 that are staying the same. And being mindful those top 5 buildings are still our smallest class sizes. That had very little movement. They did move up to a RAM 3. Looking at it, the highest we had was an average of 1 student per class. That was an adjustment for those buildings. So that's kind of just that overview of where we're looking at. Nick and I plan to share this information with elementary building admin tomorrow, and then are going to schedule just little quick Zoom sessions to go over this information with them, and they can start thinking about the impacts to their building.
A couple things else that we'd like to highlight that you'll see as you look at it in greater detail. You know, obviously these are enrollments. We just pushed everything forward. So there's going to be some movement within that, as you know, as if you're familiar with this before. And you'll also see that the kindergarten numbers is just what's currently in those buildings. So we could have some adjustments there depending on if we have more or less kids that come in this year's kindergarten class. So we always have to be flexible with that piece. One thing that's slightly different is I did, as Superintendent Degner referenced, the online enrollment. Since that's a little more fluid right now, those squares at the bottom of this are actually what is currently in the program or what's currently registered. So you can kind of see where that sits at and what that would look like for us. Obviously, in some situations, you'll see that some buildings are going to have a fairly big jump at a particular grade level, and that occurs when, you know, it's a math problem. We go from 3 sections to 2, so it was 3 sections of 20, and now it's going to be 2 of close to 30 or 30. So, I mean, it's one of those things that you'll see happen a couple times as you go through the document. You'll also see, as you look at this, in some situations, some of our buildings, in particular some of our 2-section buildings, they're really not impacted too much one way or another. They kind of just tip over into that next group, so they'll have maintained some really small class sizes still. So as you look through that document, those would be just a couple things that I'd want to draw your attention to, because I think sometimes that's where we discuss the average isn't all that much different. If you look at the top document, I think if overall it averages 1 more kid across the system, but you will see some of those kind of bigger jumps in a couple occasions and some where it still sits maybe well below that average. From a staffing perspective, one thing that I think we feel pretty good about from an HR perspective is a lot of these changes or adjustments have occurred through natural attrition. We're not going to be, we're going to have to displace some teachers and have them go to another building, but it's not going to be a significant overhaul there. So we shouldn't have a number of people coming back saying, oh, we're getting moved all over. I mean, that's just going to be fairly minor as we look at that. So that's just a couple more things that I would draw your attention to as you're looking at it independently. We'll get this uploaded for all of you, obviously, so that way you can kind of dig in. We just wanted to be mindful of just kind of the order of events as people were seeing it and wanted to share it with you today, and then we'll work forward from here. So thank you for time, and let us know if you have any. Is there any questions or anything else that you wanted to add, Superintendent Degner?
No, I would just say Nick did a nice job of talking about where you can probably potentially see some problems or anticipate where you're going to hear some concerns from some families. Those concerns, as I've shared with you guys a couple times, may not happen now in March or April, right? Those may happen in August when their student is actually in one of these classrooms knowing it. Right now, staff and principals being tuned to it, they're very familiar with this RAM model. When they get the information, they're going to know the impact to them. Families and kids won't really realize that until August. For us as a system, once we commit to the model, it becomes important that we don't make several staffing decisions then in isolation, right? Because then we do start to say, okay, if you're in RAM 4 and you're staffed this way and we start to problem solve too many of those individual situations, we get away from our commitment to the model. That's not to say that we won't end up with situations where they do tip over in some senses and we have to add other sections. But responding to the complaints or the concerns is something I think we'll just want to work on together about how we handle those, because like Nick had talked about, I mean, there is some where they had a class of 20 this year, they're going to be a class of 30 next year. That's going to feel very different to people. And that's not a consistent occurrence across the board, but to those that it does happen to, that'll be the only one they care about, right? And so that's something we'll have to remember, that it's more than just that average, like he said, across the top that just slightly creeps up. That's the reality part where it's going to feel very different to some people. So with that, yeah, we could take questions. We didn't upload it onto the board agenda, in all honesty, because we didn't want our principals and our staff to really have that information before you guys had it. So we wanted to present it to you first. Tomorrow we'll communicate it out to them, and then we'll upload it as part of the public documents so that we could stage all of our communication appropriately.
Thank you. I would open it up to questions from directors.
I have a quick question for Eliza. What did you say about is the increase of one student, is that the average Superintendent Degner just referred to? So that's the average, even though some of them might increase by 10? You can tell I'm super good at percentages.
Yep, with our top 5.
Okay,
Yep, so if you were to look
the
at.
top 5, that's what you
Yep,
said.
if you were to look at those, like Kirkwood, for example, this would pull that they had 13, and then next year they'll have 14. So there'll be a little bit of a reduction there. Most of them, sorry, let me just get to, so for Grantwood, for example, they're going from 18 to 17. Average class size building-wide is 19.9, it'll go to 21.2.
Great, sorry. And I was trying to follow everything, and I just couldn't remember that detail. And then Superintendent Degner, if I'm looking at the online, could you scroll it up for me? I can't figure out where to look right now because I can't.
That's right. That might not even be the
Okay,
most
so looking at
updated
the
about when we
online
looked at it,
numbers-
but yeah, I can kind of run you through.
Would you mind, because all I'm saying is as an impression, when I see how small those classes are, it's making me want you to explain it a little bit more. Because if we're talking about class size changes and then I see we have nobody in those classes, comparatively speaking, it stresses me out a little bit.
Are those synchronous classes, all of them?
Yes.
These are the
Yes,
elementary
yeah.
ones,
So when you look at the elementary, we have a lot of single digit sections right now. When you see first grade numbers at 4 students, second grade numbers 4 students, third grade 8, fourth grade 6, fifth grade 4, sixth grade 7. Those are all single digits, right? We did talk about trying to do that blended model a little bit with the teacher, teaching some different age groups during that time. So I think that'll be important as we continue to look at how the teacher contract looks for online teachers and how we might be able to do some different staffing options there. Where it does get difficult is going to be at the secondary with some of those synchronous. When you look at a handful of kids at each grade level, that becomes really challenging. Again, And it just becomes really inefficient. I hate to say expensive, right? Because obviously we want every kid to have a great education here, but it does become super inefficient as we look at that. And so I think it's something for us to continue to monitor. Registrations are still open and through the end of the week. We do know that based on recent legislation last week, we did have some people start to reach out about online program because of the facilities issue. I don't think that population is done being affected by the legislature yet at this point that we'll talk about in the legislative update. And so we could see some more requests there, and I think we want to be pretty sensitive and open to that. But at the same time, I do think this is something we're just going to have to continue to talk about how many resources we put there. You know, it's no surprise, right? And it's just hard, right? When you have a zero-sum game on our resources, that every resource we commit there, you know, you could be addressing a class of 30, you know, over here on site too, right? So there's no good, you know, it's hard to put a value judgment around it, I guess, about which is more important. And I think that's, you know, something we've been aware of and cognizant of, but at the same time, I do think those are going to be tough questions that continue to get presented to us.
One point of clarification I would add, you might see that it says an average that looks a little higher. It's because that's accounting for those classes being together. So it's just a simple division of the 34 by the number of staff members there. So that's why that is larger than you might see at a singular grade level. So I just wanted to point that out.
Box.
Thank you. Director Easton.
While the online program may show very small class sizes right now, I'm also remembering the numerous communications received from parents who have kids in the online program and how drastically important it is to those kids to have that situation. I know trying to do dollars to dollars analysis, you know, is a good thing, but sometimes it's not the only thing. The other thing I would like to ask or suggest anyway is that in terms of our RAM allocation of teachers to higher FRL schools, we actually have some, I think, some pretty good data now that shows that allocation, that staffing ratios are having a very good effect upon academic outcomes for kids in those schools. So if we could incorporate that data into our discussions about, our public discussions about our decisions here, I think that would be important for our parents to understand that.
And I think that is good, Charlie. And we do talk about how that, you know, especially with our top 5 schools, about the impact we're able to have on class size and the effect that has on data. You know, our hard messaging one on this is going to be that people are moving up a level, right? And I think it goes back to some of the things we tried to do through the pandemic that, you know, thankfully we had the resources during that time that we could try to keep some class sizes smaller and more manageable. But right now, you know, we're having to move the other direction a little bit. But as far as why we continue to support and use this model for our decision making, you're exactly right on that. And the only point I'd go back to on the online piece is that, you know, and I'm honestly not trying to pick a fight here, but I do feel like our on-site teachers, you know, they've been good about this, right? But I think if they came in and told you they have kids with mental health needs too, they have trans kids too, they have all of these things they're trying to do, and so we can't also get to a point by other decisions we make that we make that job too hard to be effective for the kids they do see every day, because we're not hearing those personal stories right now. We did hear personal stories from the people coming from the online program, which are true, impactful things we want to try to address. But for us managing a large system, we also have to keep our eye on where are all the voices and all the people serving that we aren't hearing those personal narratives and stories from. Because it's not that they aren't there. It's not that Brady couldn't stand up and give you 10 countless examples at Liberty High School about, as those class sizes creep up, what those on-site teachers, how their job gets fundamentally harder too. We could line those people up for you, you know, if we wanted to, but we just have to also remember that that is part of what they're doing, even though they're not coming to the microphone for us. So it is hard. It's not just dollars to dollars, like you said, Charlie. And sometimes maybe that's a life-saving mechanism that we have an online program, and it's hard to put a value around that. I'm just saying, you know, we never want to look at one in isolation. You know, everything's got to be considered together, and are we comfortable with what we're spending there and the trade-off for what we know, how it's impacting what's happening back on site. I just, because we can't say we're going to do that now in the spring with the online, and then when we get parent concerns that come to us in the fall about how big our class sizes are, then think that we can solve that, or we haven't achieved any budget reduction, right? Because we've just started putting resources back in the system wherever we hear a complaint, and that doesn't help us get there, which we all fundamentally understand, but it's hard when it gets emotional and we see the results to people.
So that's my biggest concern too, is we did hear from people because those were the people that were affected. But again, there are 14,000 kids in the district. There are more than 14,000 kids, and that represents some of our kids, not very many. And I don't want to wait for our teachers to be like, do you need me to tell you the number of kids in my class that really need some extra attention, that really have some mental health issues, that online learning's not an option for about 20 different reasons. And so I'm really reluctant to listen to one group over the other, and I think Superintendent Degner said it right, that it's all important. All those mental health issues are very real. We want to attend to as many as we can. We're being put in a very difficult situation because we don't have unlimited funding. But if I were a teacher, or if I am a parent of 3 kids, especially for the young ones, and I saw those numbers, I would be like, dang, is that really the answer? Like, that's the tricky part, and I don't know. I want to make sure the board is thinking about everybody's voice, not just the loudest ones.
Yeah, I hear you on that and what everyone's saying, and it's true, we have to find a balance. You know, I think the one thing that's different about online is we can attract people with that. And with none of our other programs can we attract anyone from Sioux City, no matter what. So I think we have an opportunity there that we're going to try to bring in. And you know what? If it doesn't work, I don't think we're going to keep going down that road with those numbers, because we have to look at these numbers and we have to balance that out. But right now, especially with the way things are in this state, this is an opportunity for this district that no other district has, right? Is to let people know it exists and people have an option, a legitimate legal option for a quality program here in this district. And I don't think we've done that part yet, to a great enough degree, which we're starting to do now. So hopefully we see return on that. And if we don't, you're right, then we have to come back to the table. I do think having those serious conversations right now with the association about how we balance the workload is very important, because that needs to look more equitable across the board for our folks in the online program compared to classroom teachers. You know, one thing I'm wondering, because I also remember the fall, right, and we're gonna hear it in August and September, if we've got some hot spots, because it's not just about numbers, it's also about behavior, right? You can have a class of 30 well-behaved kids and be fine, and you can have a class of 24 with 6 that make it real untenable. So what I'm wondering is, and then we reacted in the fall, right? We moved some folks around, we got some folks in. So I don't know if we have some hot spot, like if, to the extent that we're able to know where those are gonna be, if we could, especially in those first few weeks of school, provide folks to go out and sort of get a beat on it a little more. I know that some of this, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what the class makeup's gonna be until the fall and they show up. But just to be mindful that, hey, we might have to send some people out here and there to go in and look at behaviors, or go in and look at classroom management, or go and support, especially, right, if we have new teachers, right? So just as mindful as we can be to that, and let folks know ahead of time, hey, here's your outlet, here's your hotline, here's what to call. So when it starts popping up, we can just be responsive sooner. I know we can't totally be proactive because some of it isn't going to happen until August or September, but that would just be my thing, because nobody's happy with any of this. What I'm happy, when I go back to this budget document, I see 0 RIFs. We're not letting anyone go. I mean, I think we have to remind ourselves, no one is losing a job because of the budget. Okay,
No one's
so-
losing a job, and we didn't take any program opportunities away from kids.
We did not
right?
cut fourth
Yep.
grade orchestra or seventh grade football or a bunch of things that have happened. We're not talking about any of that. All we're talking about really, and by the way, I just wanted to say, the level of detail in this budget document, the level of transparency in March is wonderful. I mean, I just think we cannot overstate how appreciated that is. Back in the days when, the district couldn't even get the right numbers from their own people until May 1st. I mean, when some of that shenanigans was happening, the fact that we're like, here's a super detailed plan, including some stuff we might not do, but here's what we're thinking about for years past. I just think again, that kind of transparency can't be overstated, and I hope folks really appreciate that, and that's why I want to draw attention to it. But what we're doing is saying, you know what? We're going to adjust RAM by a level or so. And here's what by the way, transparently, here's what your class sizes are going to look like. 15 years ago, did anyone have anywhere near this kind of data in March? Probably not August 1st. We didn't have this level of data. So I just think none of it's good. We're having these high-level conversations, but the truth is the transparency is out there. People can make of this data what they will, to the extent that we're able to get out in front of some areas where we're like, ooh, and our first clue is like, oh, yeah, 30 kids in a class, ding, ding, ding. Oh, boy, that one fourth grade class in that one part of town, we all know because the teachers and the principals have told us, hey, this is an area we need to focus on, just to be as proactive as we possibly can throughout the summer, looking into the fall, is all I'd say. But thank you for this work.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
Yeah. I just want to agree with that point, that the level of detail and the amount of work that our administration team has put into providing as much information and resources behind this with great care to ensure that we didn't riff anyone. I just want to thank everybody who had a hand in that. Tonight, especially you guys standing up there for sharing the details about our RAM for next year. And we will be prepared for some of those hot spots that we all know we'll get those emails in August when those class sizes become a reality for some of our families. And it's just important to know that as a board, I think we've shown that yes, we listen to folks, but we realize that we have to work together to address our entire district and not just the loudest voices, as Director Pilcher-Hyatt mentioned tonight. So I would check in and see if there's any other questions or comments. Okay. Thank you so much. Next up is our presentation for the superintendent recommendation for fiscal year 24 certified budget and proposed property tax rate. Is that truly you, or is that?
Well, I'm going to kick it off.
Okay.
Les is going to do most of the talking on this item. I'll ask him to try to stay brief here, but there is an important component of this with setting the tax rate for next year, and so that's what he's going to talk to you about with the change in that, because there is a little bit of a change for us, but let him take it away and kind of walk through the highlights here.
Thank you, Superintendent Degner. Need to kind of shift your thinking here from an operational budget perspective to the overall certified budget process, because that's what I'm going to talk about. It's a statutory process that's done every year by April 15th. So that's what we're leading up to final for the approval on public hearing on April 11th. So this proposed budget and tax rate was published on March 24th in the Press Citizen, met the guidelines for publication, and so you have that document included as part of one of the items. Obviously, our tax rate will be increasing this next year. It's a combination of three factors: the way the state funding formula works and what's happened in Des Moines. We're not going to belittle that any more than we've already done over the last few months, but that's a big piece of it. Also, the manner in which we have to fund our instructional support program with the mix between property taxes and the income surtax impacts this, and as well as Superintendent Degner alluded to earlier, our early retirement plan that we had, as well as our other insurance components are also going up for property liability and those pieces as well. And so those three are the big players that do change the tax rate for next year. Now, I would like to just share kind of a public service announcement real quickly. I'll keep it brief. You probably have gotten your property tax assessed valuation sheets, and you probably said a word I can't repeat tonight when you looked at it, right? Or at least the news is presenting that. I would remind you that that's the assessed valuations and not the taxable valuations. There's this factor called rollbacks that will reduce that to about 50% of that number, and the state has a law that on average across the state, taxable valuations can't go up by more than 3% in any given year. So if you saw your assessed valuations going up by 20 to 30%, that's not what your taxable valuation is going to go up and what the tax is that's going on that. So the media is missing.
That's a really big announcement.
The media is totally missing that. They're interviewing people and saying their taxes are going up $1,500 to $2,000 because of the jump in the assessed valuations. That's not the case. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to go up, but it's not to that degree.
Not by that number, because we looked at ours last night and was like, what?
Yep. Yep. So
thank you.
That 3% cap in there really is a game changer for that valuation. That's on the residential side. The commercial side's got some buffers too, but I don't have those specific details, but I think most people look at this as their own property taxes on their own home. So I'll entertain any questions on that.
Do directors have any questions?
You know, only my public service announcement that the tax increase in here is not our fault. It's not our fault, right? It's a mistake that was made, and all cities and school districts and counties are having to deal with this, so.
There we go.
It's also not our fault that the governor refuses to fund public schools at the level that they need funding, so.
Point well taken.
You can quote me on that.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Next up is our action item. It's the 600 series that Director Finch talked about earlier in the meeting. Okay, I thought you wanted to say something. If there's no comments with that, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the 600 series.
Second.
Are there any further discussion on that? Hearing none, Board Secretary Coven, we are ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next up is the legislative update. I know there was a legislative forum this last Friday. I was unable to attend. I don't know if Superintendent Degner or the directors wanted to provide any feedback on that or just general information regarding the update.
Yeah, I'd say it just continues to be really frustrating. And I think one of the themes, not even talking about content of the last bill, is the timing and the enforcement upon enactment. It's disrespectful to a system our large and to the people that any time a law changes that you have to turn around the next day and implement it. We saw it in the pandemic, and we saw it again here with this one that, we serve 14,000 kids, 2,000 staff members, several affected, personally by this. And so to turn around and expect, us to have implementation ready to go with no rules written, and then to say we were asking for the guidance, I think is highly disrespectful. So that's not even, like I said, considering of what the actual change was. So that's problematic, but we've also learned to deal with it and adjust and try to respond as quick as we can. We did try to get our administrators together the very next day to give guidance. We tried to give information out to our students quickly as well for those that weren't happy in the delivery or some of the mechanism or the language. Again, we're trying to get the information out as quick as we can. I was proud of our team about how we did get things put together and how we were able to share that in the most sensitive way we thought possible for a really large system. Again, if we'd been given 5 to 10 days, I'm sure we could have improved upon it, but when given less than 24 hours, I think we did really, really well in that scenario. We do continue to plan to, this is now specific to the legislative change last week on 482. We do continue to plan to meet with our administrators this week to give them additional guidance and resources to share with our students. We're trying to share information about how students can sign up for circles if they do need to process, whether they're personally affected by it or friends or family, and just need some additional level of support. We've worked on facility changes, for those facilities that are affected. by it. But as far as action steps that the community commenter wrote down, I did make a note of that, or when they mentioned that, for things for us to consider about maybe things we could include in some messaging that are specific, that we did try to do that. We're trying to facilitate a lot of that information to the building level to connect directly with our staff and kids that are impacted by this. But I think that'll be good feedback for our team to talk about here in the next couple days, if that would be helpful about what we can communicate out around action steps. So that's kind of what has happened. I think what's in front of us is probably even more so troubling with Senate File 496. It's really, I don't know where that humming's coming from, but I'm going to keep going here. Governor's transparency, parents' rights, that's been approved in the Senate. There's all kinds of things in here, from a high-stakes civics test to talking about gender identity and sexual activity instruction in grades PK6, to how we can administer surveys, and then, of course, the pronoun issue that requires district to immediately notify parents if any employee reasonably believes a student has expressed a gender ID different from their biological sex on their birth certificate. And then the penalties, part of that references back to the library materials end, that if we aren't informing that Board of Educational Examiners ethics investigation and licensure consequences for our educators. I know we have several adults highly concerned about the implementation of that. So that's where I say, when I'm not sure that the impact is done with that community or to our staff, highly concerned about that one. Highly concerned about a discipline policy that talks about mandatory 5-day or day-long in-school suspensions or permanent removals from teacher classrooms. It's an aggressive legislative session that is not necessarily making our job, any easier, or our ability to make things better for kids in our district. So the next funnel deadline is this Friday. So we're hoping that we get some greater clarity on what's still alive or what's not alive. But like I said, there's a lot of things still at play that could affect us. One thing on administrator thresholds, you might have heard that 5% administrator, that bill does seem to be dead. So I don't think we're going to have any direct impact to this legislative session. So there's some significant bills still out there that could impact us. I tried to hit some generalized highlights without going on and on here all evening about it, but we did talk about some of those things, and of course the one that happened last week when we met with the legislators on Friday. So questions I can answer for you, or anything that way about what we're doing. And then I want to button up with one thing that we sent a communication out tonight that is somewhat related, but a little bit different topic.
I just want to thank the team for all the work you had to do, and fine, if you had more time, you would have done it more perfectly. I thought you did a great job with an impossible situation, and I also just want to say what a pleasure it is to sit with board members and to work for a district that all sees this for the bigotry that it is, because I cannot imagine being around a board or a team that doesn't, want to protect the kids and protect everyone's rights. So it is just an honor to be with this community, to have to handle such a terrible thing.
Agreed. Did any other director? Okay, I thought Director Eastham had something. Thank you, Superintendent Degner. I know you said you had one other
Yeah, so the
thing
final
before.
thing would be just, we had the bomb threats at Northwest Junior High last week. We believe that's specifically tied to curricular challenges that we see going on throughout the country, in reference to a specific title that we included in our message tonight and that you've probably seen in the media. We have worked with local law enforcement all the way to the FBI about those threats to navigate them. I shared with you last week, our response may not look the same every time we get a bomb threat based on the information and circumstances we have. But I do think it's important to note that we did put in that message that we've removed the title, and that's not because we necessarily have taken the stance that anything's wrong with the title, but since it was subject of a couple of those threats and knowing that it could lead to a further challenge, we're just working it through our reconsideration process right now, so we have the outcome of that. I don't have any reason to believe necessarily that it will get pulled at this point long-term, but temporarily we put in that note. So just as you guys hear from the community, that's not an attempt for us to censor the book. It's really an attempt for us to get a handle on the threat and to make sure that we've worked our process so we can feel confident moving forward.
Thank you to you and the team for the way you all handled those threats last week. I heard from several families that they were naturally terrified and worried because of the climate that we see not only in our state but nationwide, the amount of hate that's being directed towards our students. I mean, there's no other way to classify it. So I think that you all did a very good job of trying to calm those fears. And I heard from people that were actively being evacuated and how orderly and well prepared our staff was at the school and at the building, and how quickly administration was in touch with folks checking in with them. So just want to go on record that our planning and drills, even though we hope we never have to use them, actually are very helpful. So thank you for that. I don't know if any other directors had additional comments. Okay.
I just am doubtful that putting that book through a reconsideration process is going to change the threats.
I'm sorry, say that again, Director Eastham.
I just am doubtful that putting that book through our reconsideration process will actually change the threats.
You know, it may not, but I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's kind of a step you're forced to take. I understand that. But,
Agreed.
Yeah, I think overall, the things that are in our control that we're handling, we're doing it with aplomb in tough circumstances. And I heard the commenter tonight, and I understand people want action. I think, understanding the stakes and the consequences of that. And I know, I've had these conversations, privately and publicly, but I don't want to make it worse. And I'm fully wouldn't put it past people in our state right now to make it worse, to do whatever they could to double down on bigotry, to double down on hate. And I don't think at this point they understand how to do that, but I think if we do some things that they don't like, then they'll know, well, they can at least try to stop that thing that we tried to do. And so I appreciate that we're gonna support our kids and our staff, that we have their backs, and we are going to do everything we can to protect them. And I just really appreciate, and as far as the threat goes, having a daughter in the elementary school adjacent to that school, and I'm like, how was school today? And she's like, oh, fine. I'm like, was there a soft lockdown? Well, yeah. So what that tells me is the staff is not just doing all the right things, but they're doing it in a way that makes kids feel safe and supported. And so I just kudos to our staff and for everyone for doing that work. It's tough times, and I just really, like I said, Mark, I really appreciate being here around all you folks. So,
Agreed. With that takes us to our final agenda item, which is agenda setting. Sorry, my computer is doing something. It looks like we have an operations meeting on April 11th, followed by a regular board meeting. And for the operation agenda, not seeing a whole lot there, but I would imagine that the operations chair and Deputy Ramey will be talking more about those items.
Yes, I'll connect with Director Williams when she's back.
Great. And then for our...
I'm sorry, President Malone. So would the Operations Committee be a place to take up the request for support for the BASP and the summer programs that we heard tonight?
I don't think probably operations, Charlie. I think if that's something you guys want an agenda, we could do a follow-up. I did forward you guys an email tonight from just a reminder, the link to the August 9th meeting when we dealt with this last. And so if you want to do a follow-up conversation about that, I think that'd probably be wise. We just do it at the regular meeting.
At the regular meeting?
Yeah.
We can add that to, if the administration will be ready to discuss that on April 11th.
Yeah, I think we definitely can.
Okay.
Yep.
We can add that to the regular agenda item for April 11th. And as you're looking at that agenda, you'll see just our regular standing items. And I was wondering if, as part of our discussion items, if we can add, we've seen quite a few emails about the mental health work group. If we can add an item there, if the administration team would be ready for that type of update.
Yeah, hopefully so.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I mean, I've been talking to some of you folks about different things we've done, but I think it'd probably be good just for people to understand from a larger picture where that group's going, and that it will certainly engage special ed, parents, staff. They're always part of our process, so there always will be with this, but I think a comprehensive update there would be great.
Great. Were there any additional items? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a great night.